Okay, with that being said, we will call this meeting to order. And we will open with the Pledge of Allegiance and Statement of Values. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us who gives them this we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and country. All this we ask when we serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Everybody be seated. And City Clerk, if you would take the roll call, please.
Councilmember Mahan. Here. Caserta. O'Neill. Here. Davis. Here. Holstat.
Here.
Vice Mayor Watanabe.
Present.
And Mayor Gilmore, absent.
Do I have a motion to excuse Mayor Gilmore?
Excuse Mayor Gilmore. Second.
And we will vote.
1 second, please. Fast. I'll record your vote, and then I'll help you get on. I clicked the wrong one. That passes unanimously, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along, we have a public presentations. Is there anybody that would like to speak publicly before we go in? Yes, sir. You can come forward, and you have 3 minutes, sir. Did you submit a? You can give it to our clerk, please.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Gabe, short for Gabriel, De La Cruz, and I'm educated in substance abuse. And one of my goals, ultimately, or one of my goals is to obtain a national united identification. But I know, ultimately the NUID belongs to the security officers of KP.org. My sister was an employee of Kaiser, and she since 2005 and 2006 the transition of Kaiser from Kylie to Homestead to Lawrence. After her retirement, she was asked to turn in her ID. So I'm here because my thoughts and feelings of the city of San Jose has a residential treatment program. There's treatment programs and service providers and residential programs in San Jose. And there's an address of 232 available on North Morrison Way, North Morrison Avenue, the city of San Jose. And where employees should have a shelter even if there were 2 of us. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? If not, we will move into our order of business, which is holding the interviews and appointment for a planning commissioner this evening. And I believe our first applicant is here, Ashish Mangala. Ashish, you're familiar with the procedure, your opening statement, question is an answer, and then a closing statement. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I've applied for this position because of my unique perspective on multi-use aspects since I've been volunteering for library and library board, and schools. And also, I'm very interested and I have experience in placemaking and mixed use aspect of planning. And that I want to bring all the Santa Clara families together through that. And one of my goals through this position is to enhance that or provide some suggestions on that to the city. That's the reason I wanted to apply, and I want to contribute in the city again. Um, and hopefully, if I get that opportunity, I can um, increase the involvement of people of all nationalities, race, and religion into this new aspect of placemaking in Santa Clara, which we are already promoting so much. And I want to increase the involvement of all the communities. So that is the big motto behind my application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mangla. And then just in the interest of just ease in asking questions for anybody on the dais that would like to ask a question, I think it would be easier to just start to the far right and then just work our way down, and anybody who would like to ask the applicant a question would just go ahead and do so instead of pressing the speaker button. So if we start at the far end, Councilmember Mahan, do you have a question for the applicant?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I do. And that's a great way to do it. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mangla, are you willing to learn and apply our design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance to all projects, even if it's not what the staff is recommending?
Yes. For me, the legacy aspect of the city is very important. We want to maintain it. And that's why I agree with this point where I should work with the staff to make sure that this principle is adhered to.
Thank you.
Councilmember Caserta.
Nice seeing you, Ashish.
Hi.
What do you think should happen at Tasman East? What would your vision be of that 45-acre parcel?
My vision is, as I said in my opening statement, is how to create opportunity for families to come together and how to create a development in the city which can bring more businesses to that area. So both of those have to be balanced and also take care of the traffic part of it, because that side is, my feeling is that we have to create more opportunity for parking and lanes for driving. And so we have to create a development which commensurate with the amount of space we have for driving, parking, etc., and still creating opportunity for families to stay together, enjoy the businesses which are there to buy, and still sit together and talk about things. So those are my overall goals.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Thank you for applying, Mr. Mangla. So what do you see as the biggest land use challenge in Santa Clara that you would have to deal with as a planning commissioner?
The biggest is how to balance the demand for development of our city with the new families coming here, with the new businesses, Silicon Valley development, technical development, which is already happening in many companies here, how to contribute to that by providing safe housing, safety is very important for families, how to create better schools, how to create more libraries so that children from our city, they have a place to go. So those are the things which I'll be looking for. Along with that, the important part is that, like in big cities, we don't find parking. We should have parking for the families so that they can go to parks and they can enjoy that. Libraries, they enjoy that because there's no parking issues. So those are the things, along with, obviously, single family home people have this think that more development will bring more traffic, more noise, how to take care of that too. So those are the things which I want to make sure we bring all the people together, whether they are staying in apartments or in single family homes or condos.
Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Hi, Ashish. Thanks for applying. My question is more about legislative things. So how would you reconcile the requirements of AB 827 and, sorry, SB, Senate Bill, 827 and Senate Bill 35 with the needs of the community?
Can you give me some idea about those two bills?
Okay, well, 827 is in legislation right now. It's going through a process, but it actually is going to displace low-income families. That's one of their goals. And then the other one is a loss of local control power within here. So how would you balance that with the needs of the community?
Very good question, and hopefully, I don't want low family income families to go away because I want to make sure we are city of inclusiveness, which means people of all ethnic values, all income backgrounds should stay here, and that's why we want to. Why public schools are better, more important than private schools are because public schools provide each kid to mingle with kids of all backgrounds. So I think we would lose that aspect if we don't allow low-income families special housing so that they can stay in Santa Clara, even if more highly income people from new companies here in Bay Area want to buy houses or take apartments. We should make sure we have enough opportunity for low-income families to stay here. The other thing you were asking about the control. Yes, it is very important that we maintain the local aspect, local culture of our city, and we want to make sure city has a control on it. So I would like to have our city to have more control on that aspect than state taking over it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kolstad? No questions. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mongo, I do have a question for you. This is an election year, and was wondering if you are considering running for either a council or maybe even a school board seat this year. And if so, and you are appointed today, how do you think that would affect your role as a planning commissioner? And do you think you would be able to perform your duties as well as run an election campaign?
Definitely. I have an open mind on all these aspects of elections, but I have a lot of other things in my life, like I'm a scout leader. I do a lot of volunteering, so I don't know whether I can do another volunteering, but I'll keep open mind. If I feel like that I have enough energy at this age to do all those things, I will do. Yeah, definitely. And I will balance still my time as I'm doing today.
Right, yeah, because there is a lot of time commitment involved in the planning commission as well as the training and travel that's required, to learn about the position. So
very true, very true. Yeah, so I have to balance. If I make my mind that I have to do along with this volunteering work, along with other volunteer work which I'm doing, along with that another one, then I have to make sure that I don't um, uh, create problem for the work which I want to do, because my important part of my personality is that I want to contribute to the city. It doesn't matter whether in this position or that position, and that's the reason. And one more aspect of my um, thinking is how to show to my children that it's not necessary that you have to be coming from a big family or something. A new family coming to US can do what I've been trying to do. So that is my goal.
great. Thank you very much. And with that, I don't believe there are any more questions. So if you would like to have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to apply again. Hopefully, I will try to serve the city in one or any of these ways of volunteering. And if I get this opportunity, you should rest assured that I'll provide my full attention to the work which I'm doing, like I did for the libraries. That has always been my goal. I'm one of the few members who have attended most, if not all, of the sessions of my commission or board. So I think you will not find any lacking in my work towards my volunteering work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mangla. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay.
Thank you so much.
And City Clerk?
Folks ready?
Yes, Mr. Schulter, we are ready. Do you need help adjust?
No, I think
did-
I've got it.
Clerk, did you need to do something for Mr. Schulter, or? Okay. We're going
I'm
to get
good.
you a better mic, sir.
Oh, I think this is it. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you fine, yes. As
okay.
long as you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Okay, wonderful.
Perfectly
Well,
fine.
you have 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay. But let me thank you for the opportunity to come before you and to be interviewed. My name is Martin Schulter, and my wife Monique and my daughter Evelyn, who's 9.5, going on 14, moved here in 2013 and from Evergreen area. Actually delighted to be here. I like Santa Clara very much. Okay, thank you. My daughter attended Sutter Elementary, one of your best elementary schools, for 4 years until we moved her to a private school. She's in Gideon Hausner Jewish Day School in Palo Alto. My background is I worked at San Jose State University from 1982 to 2010 and retired from there. I was the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs, Director of the Disability Resource Center, not at the same time. And during the time I was the director, I was also ADA compliance officer for about 5 years, which entailed more than just thinking about physical barriers. It was programmatic access. And I was also the director of the Disabled Employee Accommodations Program, the only one in the CSU system to accommodate 300 employees with disabilities. I'm a graduate of American Leadership Forum and City of San Jose's leadership program. And I've had a great deal of experience in planning both at the campus level and in my current position as a member of the VTA's CAC and Watchdog. And recently I learned that I've been there 15.5 years. Time goes by very quickly. But that organization, which, congratulations for being on there, on the board, has a very complex set of planning and congestion management. It's rather diverse for a transit group. I was the first commissioner and helped co-found the Disability Commission for the City of San Jose. And that's pretty much it. There's more in my resume if you want to ask me questions about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schulter. And we will proceed then to the end. And Councilmember Mahan, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for applying, Martin. Are you willing to learn and apply our neighborhood design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance to projects that come before you on the Planning Commission, even if it's not what's recommended by our staff?
Absolutely. I think that is an essential part of being a commissioner.
Thank you.
And
go ahead.
there will be times, as I've observed the last council meeting, where Planning Commission and the Planning Department certainly recommended one thing, but obvious needs required some attention to delay that.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councilmember Caserta.
Thank you for applying, Mr. Schulter, what would you say to you is the biggest land use challenge in Santa Clara that, as a member of the Planning Commission, you'd have to deal with?
Well, you have an ambitious general plan, and you're looking at your focus areas and so forth. I think the biggest challenge is going to be how to manage the growth that we're experiencing and the congestion management issues. I know you're looking at a variety of areas with high-density housing, and you're also looking at connection to transportation, and neighborhood rail systems, and BART, and so on. And each of the projects that you're doing is interesting similarity to that.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Martin, for applying. My similar line was with Ms. O'Neill, Councilmember O'Neill. And so I wanted to know how you would reconcile the requirements of Senate Bill 827, which is in process right now, with the needs of the community. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm not that familiar with that.
Okay, so basically it's in legislation right now, and if it passes, what it would do or possibly do would displace low-income families and would take away our local control for planning. So I just wanted your thoughts on that, and how would you integrate that with your decisions for development?
And the control would rest with the state?
Local control would be state control. They would hand down the rulings for planning commission, have to follow those guidelines.
With regards to low income?
They would take away low-income housing. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do.
It's development.
Yes.
It's if you are. Let me just clarify, because since I'm VTA, we talk about this a lot. That if you have certain types of housing developments that are up for approval and they are within, and actually I think just today it's getting changed. It was started off being a half mile. Now I think it's a quarter mile of a transit that, and if it's it started off at 8 stories, now I think they're down to 5 stories, that by right, the project would be approved. It would not be subject to local approval of the Planning Commission and the City Council, but it would be a ministerial approval.
Right.
Well, I hope it doesn't pass. I think it's a terrible bill if it's in. I don't see the positive side, although I haven't read it, to taking away local control. It seems counterproductive to citizens. So I think we have to accept it, but there's always mitigation around it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kolstad. Okay. Thank you. Well, Mr. Schulter, my last question for you regards the election. This is an election year, and have you?
You're not going to ask me who I will vote for.
Nope, I don't believe I'm allowed to ask you that, sir.
Good.
But are you possibly considering running for city council or even the school board? And if so, and if you're appointed here tonight, do you think you would be able to run a campaign and serve on the planning commission? Because there is, I have a feeling the time commitment that's involved, and the training, and even travel to get the appropriate training. So that is my question to you.
Well, I'm not planning on running, so that resolves that conflict. And if I were, I personally wouldn't be applying for the planning commission. My focus, I believe, should be on whatever office I'd be running for.
Thank you very much. And you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
I'm hoping that you guys can pick the best candidate. I'm confident I can provide you with a lot of skills and background experience. And again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you guys good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Schulter, and thank you for applying again. I know you have been here before, and it's nice to see you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, City Clerk, the next candidate. third candidate, yeah. So I know we've moved you up in order, Mr. Park, because Jai Zhang has withdrawn his application.
Okay.
So thank you for being amenable to coming in early. So the floor is yours, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I don't really need 3 minutes. My name is Kevin. I've lived in the city for over 20 years. I've been going to city council meetings and planning commission meetings for almost as long as I can remember, but don't remember a lot these days, so that's, that doesn't mean it's a long time. In 2010, I was on the General Plan Steering Committee, so I do know a little bit about the general plan. I've gone to a lot of planning commission meetings, on both sides, both in favor of projects, against projects, but mostly to learn about what the process is and what kinds of things, what kinds of projects there are and things like that. And I feel like there's a lot more I could learn here in the city. And at the same time, there's a little bit I can contribute, and hopefully I can contribute a little bit, learn a lot, and on the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Thank you. We will then go to our Q&A, and Councilmember Mahan, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Park, for your application. I have one question, and that is, are you willing to learn and apply our design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance to projects that come before you on the Planning Commission, even if it's something that the staff would not recommend?
So the short answer is yes, meaning that there is no one rule that says that something should go forward. So you would look at every project individually, and you would apply the rules as you think that they occur. Also, it's not about my opinion either. There are lots of people on both sides, and the Planning Commission is not one person, it is a group of people. So I think that, if anything, I could add to the healthy discussion.
Thank you. Councilmember Caserta. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you for applying, Mr. Park. Good to see you. What do you think is the single most pressing or important land use issue that's going on in Santa Clara that the Planning Commission would have to deal with?
So it's not the single most important, but I think the single most seen is probably conversion from retail to housing. I think people have this idea that retail is dying, and I think with that attitude, it certainly will. But I think we need to look at what we want from the city perspective, which is, what is the vision for the city? What kind of city do we want to live in? And that issue, that vision, and trying to conform to that plan is the biggest issue that we actually need to look at. But in the meantime, there are all these applications in place, and we have to see how we can deal with these applications while trying to maintain a vision for Santa Clara. Right, but housing, always a housing problem, but in my opinion, housing cannot be separated from jobs, cannot be separated from infrastructure, because the more people that come in or the fewer people that come in, it affects the way the roads are, it affects the way the parks and the infrastructure, and these people have to have money to pay for these things, and I think that the housing crisis right now is very much tied to the jobs that are available and the types of jobs that are available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Kevin, thanks for replying.
Thank you.
Mine is kind of in the legislative world. There's a lot of things going on, and a lot of bills are coming down. So how would you reconcile the requirements of SB 827 with the needs of the community? So just to give you background, do you know SB 827?
Is that where the state wants to set guidelines for the houses? Okay.
Okay, so
To
be fair with everybody else that asked the question, what it wants to do is displace low-income housing, and it also wants to lose local control.
Understood.
So they're basically, they want everything by transit, but they're just going to say this is how it rolls.
Understood.
So I just want to know how you feel about that with the needs of the community.
So the short answer is, I feel like the local community, the local government will understand the needs of the local community better than a state government would or could, and I think that that's primarily how we should run. I think that we should look to overarching, even state or federal things when we have no better plan, but without a better plan, I think that we can probably take care of ourselves.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Kolstad. Okay. Then we will come to me, and my final question to you is, this is an election year, and are you considering running for any offices? There's a city council, there's school board seats available this year, and if so, how, and you were appointed tonight, how do you think that might impact your role as a planning commissioner as well as running an election campaign at the same time? Because as you know, there's a big time commitment involved in training and teaching and travel. So how do you feel about that whole scenario?
So the short answer is I never embark on something that I don't commit to 100%. I think that people who do know me and who have worked with me understand that I am a very busy person, but I still try to make time to do the things that I commit to. Otherwise, I don't commit to them. Right now, I've got a bigger issue, which is I'm married and I have a daughter. She's, I would say, 1 year old, and again, my wife would say 16 months, but to me, at what point do you stop? Short answer is I would take my role as a planning commissioner very seriously, to the point if I think that running for city council or running for even, we've got city clerk up for election too, I believe. If that is not something that I can maintain within my schedule, I won't sign up for it. You will find that I do not sign up for things I do not feel I can commit to, which is, that's what I do at work, that's what I do in my personal life.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers, and you now have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I understand that we have a lot of good candidates here. To be honest, anyone that is thinking about Santa Clara, I don't think you can go wrong appointing any single person here. At the same time, I do believe I have a special relationship not with just the Planning Commission, but also with the residents. Meaning I come to city council meetings, I come to planning commission meetings, not necessarily because I want to and not necessarily because I think that there's something that I want to see, but I do get a lot of people saying, hey, Kevin, did you know about this? Hey, Kevin, can you go to something like this? And I think that that has given me a breadth of vision and knowledge that you don't usually get from a lot of other people here. And I think that if you look back at the history, I hope you will feel that that is also true, which is I have been to planning commission meetings, I have been to city council meetings, and I try to be as fair as possible, and I try to be as open-minded as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, or you'll be notified as to the outcome of the vote this evening.
Understood. I'll call my wife and see how our daughter's doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know who runs the house, right?
The baby.
That's right. Welcome, Mr. Moon.
Hi there.
You're Charlie Moon, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, welcome. And you have 3 minutes for an opening statement, sir.
Sure. Let me just read out something I just quickly typed up. Hi, my name is Charlie Moon. I have lived in Santa Clara since 2000. My family opened our first restaurant in 1997 and currently has a new restaurant that opened back in 2016, both of them in Santa Clara. During then and now, I have seen the changes taking place all around us, major developments currently being built, and future developments in the horizon that will shape the future of Santa Clara. As a resident of the city, I would like to see that the infrastructure be able to handle the new amount of shoppers and new tenants in these multi-purpose developments that will not impact the surrounding neighborhoods through overcrowded parking on our streets. And I hope that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. We will go to the Q&A, and Councilmember Mahan, if you would start us, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moon, for your application. So if you were on the Planning Commission, are you willing to learn and apply our neighborhood design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance and apply those rules to projects that might come before you, even if staff had different recommendations?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Short and sweet.
Councilmember Caserta?
Think should happen in the area called Tasman East by soon-to-be City Place and Levi Stadium?
There, that's kind of hard because what I've heard was originally it was going to be like almost $7 billion development site there that's going to have a lot of hotels and have a lot of shopping center in that area. It would be nice, but then again, you're pretty much in a way changing the ecosystem of all the Santa Clara just in that region. You're going to make El Camino almost a ghost town. You're going to destroy all those businesses. So I kind of don't like that development.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for applying, Mr. Moon. So what do you feel is the single biggest land use challenge that as a planning commissioner, you would have to deal with for the city of Santa Clara?
Probably housing, affordable housing for our tenants. Because right now, home prices are extremely high. In order to even affordable home, yourself and your spouse have to have almost an income of $250,000 a year just to be able to afford to live here. So now we should look into finding ways to find more affordable housing for our, our millennials, which they cannot afford new homes. All they can do is just rent, and all their money is spent on rent and nothing saved for their down payment for the homes in the future. So there has to be a way that we can find a way that we can accommodate these, our future children's.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Pass.
Mr. Colstead? Councilmember Colstead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to ask, and maybe you can explain in a little bit more depth.
Yes.
Your priorities. Is it more residential? Is it more commercial retail? Do you think we should be building more industrial type buildings? Where do you think the city should be going?
The city, I think, should find a nice balance between residential and commercial. Right now, we do have a lot of shopping centers that are going to go down and be transformed into multi-purpose areas, especially around El Camino area. That's going to impact the traffic. That's going to impact the residents that's living around the area that it's become overcrowded. And as a tenant and also as a business person, I've talked to a lot of customers that are worried about how it will impact their way of life, how it will impact their, in a sense, their streets and their neighborhoods. So if you can find a balance, that'd be perfect.
Thank you. And then I have one final question,
Yes.
and that regards the fact that this is an election year, and there are quite a few positions available in the city, whether it be here at City Council or the school board. And my first question is, are you considering running for any of those offices? And if so, and you're appointed here tonight, how do you think that might affect your ability to be able to serve on the Planning Commission and possibly run an election campaign instead? Because as we know, there's a big time commitment, on the Planning Commission. It involves travel, training, and if you're running a campaign, it's going to take a lot of time as well. So your thoughts?
I have no plans to run for any of those positions. I'm already busy enough as is as a owner of a business, and to be part of this community, I think, or this committee, would take more than enough of my time. And plus, the fact that I would need the extra time to spend with my family.
Thank you. And thank you for the answers. And with that, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
I just hope that you just take my application into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. You're welcome to stay, or you will be notified, whatever you decide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Arundhati? Okay. Please come to the podium. And you have 3 minutes for an opening statement.
I'm Arundhati Bhaumik. I currently work for IBM, and I've been working for this company for the last 23 years. And I work on mission critical projects. I had been development manager for various things, and I work on all critical leading edge technologies, which I have learned on the go. So I feel that I can take up responsibilities, I can take up various different activities, and I love my city where I'm residing. So I want to do some constructive work for my city. So that's why I'm here today.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll start the Q&A. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you, Ms. Barmick, for applying. My question is this. Are you willing to learn and apply our design guidelines, our neighborhood design guidelines, and our city's historic preservation ordinance to projects that would come before you on the Planning Commission, even if staff had other recommendations?
Yes, definitely. So I have been doing various design and architecture in my own company. So I definitely like to do that. Yes.
Councilmember Caserta. Member O'Neill?
Thank you, and thank you for applying. What do you see as the biggest land use issue or challenge that the Planning Commission would have to deal with for the city of Santa Clara?
Currently, the way I see the various development that has been happening in this over years, the high density residence that is happening is the biggest challenge I feel. I feel that Santa Clara City is getting a lot of money from the new residents that are coming in, but it's also creating a lot of traffic and a lot of congestions and a lot of other theft and other things that we need to deal with as well. So a lot of responsibility comes with that.
Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Kolstad?
I'd just like you to expand a little bit on your feelings about residential development versus commercial retail, which we should be focusing on in your view, or should we be building more industrial buildings? Where do you think the emphasis should be on new development?
50-50 would be my answer here. But if I want to see new development, I would like to see which is constructive for the new generations that is coming in this city. I don't see much of presence of Santa Clara residents in international sports or international education patterns that happens from other cities. I would like to see that more. So we have this central park where I see the International Swim Center. I would like to have more of that international events that can happen in Santa Clara. So those are the kind of areas that I would like to focus on.
Thank you. And then I have one final question. This is an election year, and there are several seats available on the City Council, School Board, City Hall. Have you, if you are appointed this evening, are you considering possibly running for any elected office that might impact your role as a planning commissioner?
Yeah, sure. If that is possible, of course, I would love to do that. Anything that I can contribute for the improvement of this city, I would definitely like to do that.
You, if, say you ran for office, you would have to step down from the Planning Commission, which involves a lot of time commitment along with training and travel. And so to take on, to be appointed to the position and then run for office, and you would have to step down. How do you feel about that?
Well, everything is a learning process as we are gearing up. If I'm doing a more constructive work in that, a bigger role, definitely I would like to do that.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your answers. And you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Yeah, well, I think this is a very responsible work, and I am very appreciative for you, all of you, to give me this opportunity to even get selected here for this interview today. So if I do get selected, of course, I'll be very happy, and I'll be happy to work with all of you to understand, learn, and contribute to the residents where I am. So I want that residents' voice to come in together to work with all of us for our own benefit. So that's all I can say.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for applying. And you're welcome to stay and find out the results after the conclusion of all of the interviews this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Becker.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Hello, Mrs. Watanabe.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, good evening, Council. Vice Mayor Watanabe. My name is Anthony Becker, and I've been a long-term resident of Santa Clara majority of my life. There was about a 10-year gap where I didn't live here. I lived in the Central Valley and went to high school. But I came back here, started my life here, graduated from college here at San Jose State as of December, graduated from De Anza College in 2016. And what attracted me most to this position was the responsibility of planning for our city. And that is my really #1 goal, is the responsibility of the planning of our city. on top of that, I see that we need a new direction in a perspective of a millennial, of somebody who is younger, who's going to be living in this city when the city begins to be, the torch is passed on to my generation. Therefore, I feel that I am probably one of the best choices for this planning commission, because I feel that this city needs a new vision and a new perspective, as well as common sense to planning in our city's government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. We will start the Q&A. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Becker, for your application. It's very complete. My question is this: are you willing to learn and apply our neighborhood design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance to projects that would come before you on the Planning Commission, even if staff had different recommendations or recommendations contrary to what those ordinances say?
I would agree with you on that. That is probably the #1 priority for me. Yeah, upholding it, sorry.
Councilmember Caserta.
Anthony, where's one or two places where you see potential affordable housing opportunities in Santa Clara?
I see, especially where the Moonlight Shopping Center is, that is a very big opportunity for us. For a while, I was really against that opportunity, especially where the bowling alley was, but now I'm starting to see the effects of how it can have on our community. So that's where I believe that the affordable housing could be fit into that area. It could be fit into other areas, such as right over here near City Hall, which I think that's already planned. But that is, I believe, two very popular locations that we could probably put affordable housing.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Anthony, for the very in-depth statement that you took the time to write. So what do you see as the biggest land use challenge or opportunity, whatever, that you as a planning commissioner would face in looking at the city of Santa Clara?
That would probably be open space. We talk a lot about it in the city, about open space, and that is something that I would really like to preserve. But yet at the same time, we have to have a balance between planning some, decent housing, planning affordable housing, planning housing in general, because we do have a jobs to housing imbalance. So that would probably be the major goal in that whole aspect, would probably be preserving open space. That is a #1 priority for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Mr. Becker, mine is more in the legislative world because we have a lot of bills that are coming down. And so I wanted to know how you would reconcile the requirements that SB 827 and the needs of the community. Are you familiar with SB 827?
A little bit familiar, yes.
Okay. I want to know how would you do that with the community needs?
Well, first off, I believe that the community does need affordable housing, and that is, I think, a very key step. 65%, I think it is, of our residents are renters, and a lot of them are leaving left and right. A few of my friends recently just decided to pack up and move to northern Washington. So it's a very delicate situation with this bill. A lot of people are very against the affordable housing, especially like things like rent control or something like that. But I think this bill is a key to creating more affordable housing, because especially on our transit regions, El Camino especially. And I would also probably recommend also Lawrence and San Tomas Expressway areas too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cole said no. Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, I have one final question for you, and that is, are you considering running for office this November? There are several council seats as well as school board seats, and if so, and you are appointed today, how do you think that would affect your role as a planning commissioner? Do you think you would be able to perform your duties and run an election campaign?
Well, first off, I am probably not going to run if I'm appointed to the position of planning commission, because first off, I don't want to bite more than I can chew. Second hand, if I did even run, which is probably not, especially with the whole district talk right now, I'd figure I'd rather let that issue be settled first before I decide if I ever want to run for council again. But like I said, don't bite off more than you can chew if you're on planning commission. I mean, it would be my number one priority, is assuring the projects on Planning Commission are passed or done in the appropriate manner.
Thank you. And with that is the end of the Q&A. You have 1 minute for a closing statement.
All right, well, I apologize for being a little nervous. Typical is of me. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to come in here and speak with all of you. I know I may, be a challenge in some issues on planning, but I think that I could be a determination factor on this in providing the best for our community for the future. I believe as a millennial, this is a chance for us to really kind of heal our city and kind of put a new direction on the planning of our city and the direction of our city. And all of you have been influences to me in my life as I've watched a lot of you run your campaigns and win city council races and also working on planning commission. Just want to say thank you for being the inspiration in this city. We may not agree at all times, but I envy every opportunity that you guys give me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. You're welcome to stay to find out the outcome of the voting this evening, or you will be notified.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, Mr. Marinaro.
Good evening.
You're welcome, and you have 3 minutes for an opening statement, sir.
Thank you very much. So, hi, I'm John Marinaro. I'm a little tall. I believe I'd be a great candidate for the Planning Commission because I bring one thing that I think is needed on any great commission or council, and that's perspective. When it comes to a lot of gatherings, you look at the people around you and you find that a lot of you have the same views and the same wants and the same desires, but being a person who is, I guess, compared to a lot of the other applicants, only a short-term resident, about 8 years now, I do have a lot of perspective of other cities and going to their meetings, going and seeing how they do their things, and being able to bring that perspective to Santa Clara. I was a student at San Jose State and San Jose City College, and at both of those, I participated with their various governmental programs, either covering them as a journalist or actually as a member of them. And while that was always not always a fun process, especially when embezzlement's involved, it is always an eye-opening one. And that led me to also be able to cover things like these San Jose City Council meetings, and of course that piqued my interest with Santa Clara. And so I started coming, occasionally to meetings, commission, as well as City Council, and just watching, seeing how things go. Now, the perspective that I believe I bring that is above most important is, albeit one of youth. I am a young member of Santa Clara. I am, as people like to call, a millennial. And I'm part of a demographic that makes a decent amount of money, but finds itself in the same kind of housing crunch that we see in the rest of the country, but most importantly here. And I see that Santa Clara, above all, I'd say the county of Santa Clara, does a lot of great work to help create better housing and to work with people on that. And what I want to do is kind of give my advice in an advisory role to help push a better future for our younger members so that we can keep growing as a city. I love the city of Santa Clara. My grandmother's lived over behind Santa Clara High for as long as my mom's been alive, at least. This has always been my second home whenever I came to Northern California. And so there's a lot that I love about this city, and there's a lot that I think that I can bring to it with regards to my experience, my knowledge, but as well as, just a view of somebody that may not have lived there their entire life, that may want to actually help out and do things for the betterment of the community. I've got a background legally. My wife went to Santa Clara Law. I helped coach her through all of that, including all the property courses, and worked with her and her father, who's a property attorney locally, to get through all of that, work with easements, and finding what I would say the equitable measure would be. So when it comes to knowledge, experience, and perspective, I feel like I'm the best candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Marinaro. We will then go to the Q&A. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Marinaro.
Like the sauce with an O.
Thanks for your application. I wanted to ask this. If you were appointed and you were serving on the Planning Commission, are you willing to learn and apply our design guidelines and our neighborhood, our historic preservation ordinance to any projects that might come before you, even if staff had different recommendations that would be contrary to those guidelines and ordinances.
Would those staff be city council, or would those be recommendations of the other councilors?
No, I'm sorry. They
commissioners?
would be recommendations coming from the planning department, from the staff that would staff the planning commission, from the planning department.
I would weigh the
employees.
difference on that. If it's something that I would consider like a historical measure, something that's protected by law, that's something that I would, once again, weigh with a little bit more guidance than, say, a particular design guideline. If it's things like, say, tiling color, that kind of thing, versus, what they're going to be used for that. But, it is a tit-for-tat job. It's something where you have to see what the, I would say what the people who are employed to make those recommendations make versus what we have as a particular guideline. Laws can be changed, but at the same time, there are things that you need to stick with to make it a cohesive and beautiful community that we have.
Councilmember Caserta.
Thank you for your energy and your application. What do you think should happen at the Moonlight Lanes Shopping Center where the bowling alley was?
Oh, I'm sad that it's gone. I, once again, grew up going to that. Yay, grandparents. That said, it is a large plot of land right on El Camino in a corridor that's been, it's part of the development corridor. The El Camino has been growing. There are a couple businesses that I would love to see get rehomed, but with something like the Moonlight Center and such, the amount of benefit that you get out of the way that is laid out compared to what we're able to do there with, say, mixed use, maybe a better designed area that has some large shopping, but once again, more housing, more businesses that are local, would be, it really would depend on the plan. But am I sad that Moonlight's gone? Yeah. Am I looking forward to see what takes its place? Oh, heck yeah.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, and thank you for applying. And in the interest of disclosure, at Mr. Marnauer's request, I did meet with him to talk about the role of the Planning Commission. So what do you see as the largest or single most important land use issue that you as a planning commissioner would have to deal with related to the city of Santa Clara?
Do you want the answer in regards to what I've seen at commission meetings, or the answer in regards to what I'd like to see as a long-term goal?
Whichever you feel more comfortable with.
Commission meetings, it tends to be a lot towards, I would say, changing specific use plans towards, families having homes that may not have the same driveway or garage space based on regulations. That's been something that's come up at many meetings, and it would be interesting to see us be able to change that so we don't have as many people have to come up to the meetings and ask for an easement for that. In terms of long-term goals, public transportation is a massive issue. We actually have one of the best systems in a city that I've ever been in, and that includes Minneapolis, Tucson, Southern California. Our VTA is amazing compared to those cities. That said, there is lots of room for improvement, and with the speed at which we've grown, we need to make improvements to that. And with regards to planning and zoning, there's a lot we can do with being at the forefront of it, and we already are. BART's ending here. We are pushing forward for rapid transit to get more people through. But it's, I would say, the ability for people to move back and forth so that we can relieve congestion and allow for better, smarter growth, and then better use of, say, parking areas that may be able to be transformed into local shopping, business, or residences.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Kolstad.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Marinaro. I have one final question, and that regards the fact that this is an election year. And with that fact, would you consider, or are you considering running for office this year? Especially if you are appointed today, serving on the Planning Commission and then running for office. There's a lot of time commitment involved serving on the Planning Commission. There's travel, there's training, and so just being the fact that it is an election year, there are quite a few seats up for election this year in either the city or the school board. Do you have any aspirations?
I would say I've got long-term aspirations. As for this year, not so much. I do have the time to dedicate towards the council, learning, traveling, and being able to participate. But I would be giving that over to the council or to the commission, where I believe I can make the most use of my time and the best use of my time.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for seeing me tonight. It was a pleasure talking to everybody here. I'm really looking forward to seeing where the city goes. We have a unique job and a unique position at the center of innovation, where we've got a lot of history that we can touch on with the mission, with our electric district, with our transportation programs, and the footing that they gave us to become a great city. What I want to see is us not to just dwell on that legacy, but to build upon it and to make us the greatest city in California, if not the country. And I think we can do that. I think it's possible. Thank you.
That's why they call us the center of what's possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Marinaro. Appreciate your application and your time, and you are welcome to stay until the end to find out the selection of the candidate.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good evening, Ms. Horwich. Welcome. You have 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay, I guess I'll start with why I'm here. I would not normally consider doing this kind of thing, but I'm doing Leadership Santa Clara currently. And one of the first things we did was come here, and we were put into kind of a mock planning commission setting where we were given a proposal to review, a list of why people wanted it, a list of reasons why people didn't want it, and we were put into one side or another and had to come up and speak. And I realized that planning and what goes along around here is a lot more complex than I had ever thought, and it was actually kind of fun. We also went on a bus with a city planner who pointed out things like, here's something that was going to be built, but people had a fit. Here's something we're currently building. Here's something we're proposing. Let me tell you why most buildings are only 6 stories in this city. I found that very interesting. And I'm very fortunate in that I have some spare time, and so I wanted to give back to my community. I bought a house here in 2009, but even before that I was a renter in Santa Clara. So I'm very interested in how this city will do.
Great, thank you. We'll turn over to the Q&A and Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Horwich, for your application and your interest in serving Santa Clara. My question is this. Our city has neighborhood design guidelines and a historic preservation ordinance. So are you willing to become familiar with these and to apply them to projects, the guidelines and the ordinances, apply them to projects that come before you as a planning commissioner, even if the staff recommendation, that is the planning department recommendation, might be different from what the ordinance is saying?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it would be interesting to learn them.
Councilmember Caserta.
Where is one area that you would support development to tackle the housing crisis?
That is a very good question, because I've watched my community really, due to the housing crisis alone, the home I bought in Santa Clara in 2009 has literally doubled in value, which is shocking to me, but it just tells you what a difficult place this is to live. So one of the places that I would be interested in, I know some people have actually looked at it, is very close to where I live, which is basically at Kiley and El Camino. There's a corner there that's sort of kind of been forgotten, I think, by time, and it's prime real estate, right there at El Camino, and I think we could do a lot of good things there. And it's not all, we have decent public transportation on El Camino. It is not fabulous. I'm married to a New Yorker who constantly tells me, this should be a public transportation city. And so I do look at those things. And I think El Camino is a great place to be.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, and thank you for applying. So what do you see as perhaps the single biggest land use challenge that you would have to face as a planning commissioner for issues the city of Santa Clara is dealing with?
Well, in my opinion, it would be a project that we've learned about in Leadership Santa Clara, which is the land there that was going to become Yahoo, where there is a proposal to make I believe it is several very, very tall building with a lot of housing units. My husband is an engineer and he's a pilot, so I've also heard all about the FAA and what they'll think of that based on the approach for SJC. So I think that place has a lot of potential, and I think it's going to be very complicated, but it would be a shame to not do something with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis.
Maria, thanks for applying, but leadership sparked you, and that's a good thing, because we love to do the leadership in Santa Clara, but just coming here and going through that process, because I think I was here that day that you guys were going through the mock thing. I just wanted to say that I was going to ask you a legislative kind of question, and I don't think you're kind of there yet, but and you talked about something about with the El Camino. I mean, Councilmember Caserta asked you a good question about where you thought development should be. I want to go with retail. What do you think about the retail in the city? And you're going to get a lot of those questions in the Planning Commission. So I wanted to know what you thought about how that balance was going to happen. You'll get these projects that will come, but what is your, I guess, your thought on that between parking? You were talking about transit a little bit. What is your thought on how would you, if a project came and there was a parking issue in the community, how would you address that?
Well, I think there most assuredly is going to be parking issues in the community. I know that we've changed the formulas of how many spaces will be built for X, and there's a lot of apartment complexes near me, and people are parking illegally because there's not enough parking. So I'm 110% sure that there'll be parking issues. And no, I don't know a lot about legislation. I guess what I bring to the table is I'm a therapist who's good at analyzing and being analytical, hearing all sides, and doing conflict resolution, which is kind of what I think partially is going to be needed. I'm aware that the mixed space is what's really prevalent now, and I'm aware also that in some cities like San Francisco, the retailers can't afford the rent for that space, and so it's actually empty, and that's also a real shame. So I think mixed use is a good idea, but I think it's also naive to expect people that don't live there to come to that retail space when there's not going to be parking.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kolstad. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. I have one final question, and that is, well, first I was going to say you're talking to two fellow New Yorkers here, so I really appreciated your comment about your husband and the transportation.
You feel his pain.
Yes, totally. And having worked in New York City for 9 years, I totally understand. So my final question to you regards the fact that this is an election year, and with that, if you were to be appointed this evening, and do you have any aspirations, to run for office? There's several council seats or school board seats available, and because as a planning commissioner, you would have to step down, and there's a lot of training, there's a lot of involvement and time commitment that goes along with being a planning commissioner. So if you were to consider running for office, do you think that would have an impact in eventually having to then step down?
I realize I'm very young in this, but I do not anticipate wanting to run for office. I would like to represent my community well, but I talked to a few of my people in Leadership Santa Clara, and they said, that commission, I think a lot of people are on that commission on their road to running for office. And I said, well, that is actually not me. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in doing right by my city, but I don't think that I want to do something that long-term and that high up.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your answers, and you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
I just wanted to thank you all for your time, and you're in a difficult city because everyone wants an affordable place to live, and no one has the magic bullet answer. If we did, we wouldn't probably be spending all this. We wouldn't have a planning commission even, maybe. It would just be so natural and easy. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Horwich, and you're welcome to stay and until we do the voting this evening for on who will be the final candidate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hong, it's very nice to see you. Come forward, please.
Thank you.
Welcome, and you have 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, honorable council members. I'm happy to be here. I'm a 19-year Santa Clara citizen. Right now, I'm a hardware engineer working for a startup for autonomous driving. I think my reason try to be a planning commissioner, I think the first thing is from bottom of my heart, I really want to serve the city. Actually, this also inspired by one of the council member, since I think all council members know I have a case. It lasts about 1.5 years. And for my case, actually, one of the council member drive around the neighborhood. And actually, my project is a very small project. It's just a single family house. Compared to the city, big projects, nothing. But she drive around in the neighborhood. So I can see her dedication to the citizens. I really learned a lot from that. Another thing is actually, for me, actually, I think I'm eager to learn. I have no idea about city planning at this time, but I think with dedication, I should be able to learn a lot. Just like I worked with Cisco for 18 years, but last year when the self-driving car business pop up, I just jumped to another startup. After 6 months, right now I'm the hardware lead in the company. Yeah, actually, I think for good planning, I think, for example, for the traffic, these kind of things, I think right now the field I'm working with may help. Actually, we work with the computer vision to identify the road condition. I think this technology can also be used to help the city collect data for our plannings. So hopefully that can help. Another thing is, I think I also learned from my case is listen to different opinions, no matter what. Actually, I met most of the city council members. Yeah, I mean, most of them really listen.
That's just to indicate your time is up. So I'm sorry, but
Okay.
we are going to move on to the Q&A, and which Councilmember Mahan will start.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you, Mr. Hong, for your application. So my question is, are you willing to learn and understand and apply the neighborhood design guidelines and the historic preservation ordinance to all projects that come before you if you were a commissioner, even if staff had different recommendations?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I think that's really very, very important. Actually, for our design guideline, actually one of the reasons I think it's not perfect, but absolutely at this time probably, yeah, I'm willing to learn. And yeah, I read design guideline multiple times before. I think something are good, but something I don't think that's that good. I can give you an example. Our design guideline requests a setback for the two-story house at the fourth side. This, I mean, I don't have my laptop, but this will push the second floor. It's very difficult if you have a column from top to the bottom. If you have one or two sides without setback. That's, I mean, I learned, but yeah, it's good and bad, yeah.
Councilmember Caserta.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Nice to see you again. So, Mr. Huang, what do you think is the biggest land use challenge that you would face as a planning commissioner trying to serve in the city of Santa Clara?
Yeah, I think the city is growing. Probably we have no more land. I think it's a balance, development and the preserve. I think we should put, some high density, maybe, let's say close by to some big campus, these kind of things to help. Yeah, I personally, I mean, I understand a lot of people, they try to keep their living style, but we don't have the houses to hold the people here. I think no matter what, we need to resolve that. Of course, that's also related to traffic, right? My feeling is we don't have a good public transportation system here. I think if we have a better transportation system, that also will help. The reason I see that is in China, you can see their subway system. In Beijing, it's a 20 million people big city. You can get on the subway, you can go to anywhere. But here, I think it's very difficult.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis, Councilmember Kolstad?
Maybe you could talk, there's very little undeveloped land in our city, but there are huge opportunities for redevelopment. Maybe you could share with us your ideas about what type of development that should be, whether it should be residential or commercial retail. Thank you.
Yeah, to be honest, I know nothing about this at this time, but I'm willing to learn from council members and the current planning commissioners to understand more. I don't think it's easy to make a decision for me to say this one should build a commercial, that one should build a residential. To be honest, I need to spend more time to learn in that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kolstad. And I have one final question for you, Mr. Hong, and that is, it's an election year, and are you considering running for any of the offices? There's a city council, there's school board positions, because if you were to be appointed this evening to the Planning Commission, there's a lot of training involved, travel, time commitment, and if you were to then be appointed to the Planning Commission and then run for office and win, you would have to step down from the Planning Commission. So, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
No, this position is a big challenge for me, to be honest. If I decide to do something, I really want to do it good. It's good for the city, good for the people. I hope that can contribute to build a better Santa Clara for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hong. And with that, that's the conclusion of the questions. However, you have a 1-minute closing statement.
Thank you so much. I'm not good at talking, but I think I focus on something. Hope to have the opportunity to serve the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hong. Thank you for applying, and you're welcome to stay and for the conclusion of the meeting this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is our final applicant, I believe. Good evening, Mr. Hicks.
Hi.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your application. You have 3 minutes for an opening statement, sir.
All right. Hopefully I can say something original. You're about 10 people in now. Anyway, I just want to say that I the only reason I saw this in the first place, the application, was that I saw it on social media. So, clearly you guys are, using different avenues to communicate with, residents of Santa Clara. So just a little bit about me. I'm an engineer. I'm recently married, and I moved to Santa Clara actually last year. So, very new resident, but I'm very eager to get involved. And so, in any case, I've lived in the Bay Area for several years now. My first experience was several years ago. I came to work at a startup. When I was back in grad school. And one thing that really struck me was I was just at a random party and I met like the head of the professional society that of the field that I work in. So, it was really surprising to me, you can just you can go here and you can find these really deep technical subject matter experts. And it's coming from the South, I'm I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is where you want to be if you're an engineer. And I think that's what makes Santa Clara, the Silicon Valley in general, very special. So anyway, eventually, I met my wife that summer. I moved out here, and we moved in together. We did the starving student thing for a while. We bumped around different places. We kept costs low, and eventually we were able to, afford a house, and that's how we ended up in Santa Clara. And one of the great things about Santa Clara is that it's kind of it's very community oriented. I think of all the places that we looked for a house, the house that we eventually chose was one that, it was very, very neighborhood oriented. We happened to be looking around Christmas time, and it was so amazing to see everybody's houses lit up. It's something that you don't necessarily see that much anymore. So anyway, why am I saying this? I'm basically trying to tell you that, I been very fortunate to have a house, but I think at the same time, I'm definitely not that far removed from, the starving student lifestyle. And in any case, I think as a result, I can advocate for young people fairly well. So in any case, I think in terms of the Planning Commission, I'm not really looking to, make waves. I'm really looking to kind of apply, my ability as an engineer to kind of, analyze things, question things, and basically make sure that we conform kind of to the spirit of what has been set out, by the elected officials in the city. And I think that, as a result, I hope that I can, do that.
Thank you for your opening statement, and welcome to Santa Clara.
Thank you.
And we will start the Q&A. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Hicks, for your application. My question is this: if you were appointed to the Planning Commission, are you willing to learn and understand and apply our neighborhood design guidelines and our historic preservation ordinance to all of the projects that you might see as a planning commissioner, even if our planning department staff had some recommendations to the commission that might be contrary to those guidelines and ordinances?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I mentioned in my opening statement, the guidelines, the specific plan and the general plan were something developed by the democratically elected officials of the of the government, and I don't think it's really my role or someone else who was not directly appointed to kind of impose their will. We have documents to work off of, and I'd like to make sure that we can conform to those.
Councilmember Caserta.
Where's one specific place that you would like to see housing in our city, especially among young folks?
It's a tough question because I think I think I read the figure in the general plan that we're 97% built out. So there's only so many places that we can put housing. One figure that I found was very striking was that we have roughly a 20% commercial vacancy rate. I think there's a great opportunity to convert commercial properties to residential properties. Especially in the Tasman area. I understand that there are specific plans for the Tasman area, and I think honestly, those would be great places to put new housing without, causing the pitchforks to come out,
Somebody told you about them? Councilmember O'Neill.
Yeah, and thank you for your application, Mr. Hicks. So what would you think is maybe the single most important or biggest land use challenge that as a planning commissioner you would face for the city of Santa Clara?
Yeah, I think, I think kind of, I honestly think it's a related question to the previous question in that I think being aggressive and approving in advocating for like developers that are coming in to convert commercial properties to residential properties, I think that's a big challenge, and it's something that, with the limited space we have left, we need to really think about how to like most efficiently use that land.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis? Councilmember Kolstad?
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hicks, I will ask you your final question. This is an election year, and if you were to be appointed to the Planning Commission this evening, do you have any thoughts or to run for office this November? There's council member seats open, there is school board seats opened, because there's quite a commitment involved with, becoming a planning commissioner, the training, the travel, and then to, if you were elected, you would have to step down from the planning commission. So do you have any thoughts about that, sir?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm in my early 30s. I am. I would say political aspirations are not really on my radar right now. I really just. I view the planning commission as fairly. In some sense it's mundane. It's a lot of reading through very very dense literature, looking at a lot of facts and figures thrown around by people. I've seen the minutes. They're hundreds of pages sometimes, right? So anyway, I'm so early in my career that I'm interested in growing in my career, but at the same time, I'm interested in giving back. So the answer is, I'm not interested in running for any kind of office.
Okay, thank you. And with that, that's the end of the Q&A, but you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I know I'm probably the most recent resident that has come up here to vie for this position. But I just want to say, if you don't pick me, please pick someone who is, kind of like young and hungry and starving a little bit, and is not so far removed from what a significant portion of the population is dealing with. So my understanding is that the previous vacated position was by someone who basically said he had to move elsewhere because he couldn't afford to live here. And, it's a shame, because I think people like that are the kind of people that should have the city's ear. And, with him gone, I'm not sure if it's entirely represented. But anyway, I think, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I think Santa Clara is a great city, and I think it consistently punches above its weight. I'm going to point to the stadium as a great example. So anyway, I hope I can make a positive impact.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your application. You're welcome to stay. We will be voting shortly, so you're welcome to stay to find out the results, but thank you again for your application.
Thank you.
I believe that is the conclusion of the applicants, City Clerk?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, Vice Mayor Watanabe, if I may just remind the council that because we have a total of 10 applicants, so more than 5, each council member will be able to cast 1 vote for each of their 2 desired appointees. So in other words, you have 2 votes, and only 1 vote per applicant is allowed. A council member may choose to vote for only 1 applicant, but then will relinquish their other vote. And at the end of that, we will tally the votes. Sophia is here to help me, and we'll announce the top 2 applicants. So those 2 applicants that received the highest number of votes, and then each council member will have time for deliberations if you'd like, and then we'll have 1 vote, and we'll see how we do with that.
Okay.
2, correct?
You have 2 at the first round, and then you have 1.
His hearing.
2
to make sure.
2 the first round, and then we'll get the top 2 candidates, and then you'll have 1 vote.
I have a request.
Okay, so with that, you will start the...
I'm sorry, I have a request to speak, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me.
I have a request to speak. I don't know if it shows up on
Oh.
your screen there.
No, I'm sorry, it does not, but yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I know we're still working out the bugs on the system. Would it be appropriate for us to have 3 votes, given the fact that we are only 6 members and there are, what, 10 applicants? If we each had 3 votes, it would seem we could spread them out a little more equitably.
I'm just going off of the prior practice, but it's certainly up to your
Right,
discretion
and we
if
often
you'd like
have
to do
2
that.
votes if, we have 5 applicants. It sort of becomes a function of applicants to votes ratio. But with 10 applicants and only 6 council members, nobody's going to get, it's possible that nobody would get a majority of any votes. So I might suggest that we adopt 3 votes.
Do we have a motion? Do we need to make a motion?
I
to
would make that motion, Madam
recommendation?
Mayor.
Need to take a
You
vote?
just do a verbal vote if you'd like.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes
Give me a
have it.
second here, because that wasn't in my mind, my thinking.
So 3.
So we'll have 3 votes. You have a question? Or?
No, I wanted just to think, because I was only thinking of which 2. So if I could just have a moment to
Yes,
think
of
before we
course,
start the
of course.
voting.
Everybody ready? City Clerk?
We can do it so let's try it through the Granicus system. I'm going to put a name up and I'll announce the name and then we can start to do the recording of the vote. So the first candidate is Mr. Mangla. Yes, right? That's right. So if you would like to vote for the candidate, you can just vote yes. Okay, I'll record that vote. So there were no votes for Mr. Mangla. Right. And the next is Mr. Schulter. Okay, I'll record the vote. Next, we have Mr. Park. I'll record the vote. Next, we have Mr. Moon. I'll record the vote. Next, we have Mr. Braumick. I'm sorry, Mrs. Braumick. I'll record the vote. Next, we have Mr. Becker. I'll record the vote. Try to record the vote. So we have 3, there it goes, 3 votes. Councilmember Mahan, Councilmember Caserta, Councilmember O'Neill. I'm sorry, the system is glitching a little bit. So rather than hold the meeting, I'll go to Mr. Marinero. And I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, we'll have to do a verbal vote or a show of hands, please.
Okay. Mr. Marinaro?
Thank you. And two votes. Councilmember O'Neill and Vice Mayor Watanabe. The next candidate is Mrs. Horwich.
Are we on Maria?
Yes.
Yes.
The next candidate is Mr. Huang. And the last candidate is Mr. Hicks. We had one vote by Councilmember O'Neill.
Who is Mr. Hicks?
And so, Mr. Hicks, we had Councilmember Caserta, Colstat, and Davis.
For who?
Mr. Hicks.
And
Holstack, Caserta, and Kathy.
So 4 votes total. Correct. So we have 3 candidates that have 3.
No.
That was all 4. I mean, all 10.
2, 3.
Kevin Park was called the third in his order that he spoke.
Okay, so we have 4 of them that have 3 votes. Is that right? Okay.
3.
Who has 4 votes?
So one candidate, Mr. Hicks, has 4 votes. We have Mr. Scholter that has 3, Mr. Park that has 3, and Mr. Becker that has 3. So, Vice Mayor, we could do a vote just on the top 3. Those tied for second place of the 3, and then do a final motion. It's up to you.
Would you take all the 4 candidates?
I think they need to take the 4.
You'd have to take the 4 because you have 1 candidate with 4 votes, and then the 3 with 3 votes.
And there's 3 with 3, yeah.
Right. So if you would like to just take Mr. Hicks, then that is appropriate as well.
It's too close.
Right.
We only have 1 slot, though.
We
I mean,
can-
it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
I'm
Or
all
we
for
could
giving it
just
to
accept
Hicks.
Mr. Hicks.
Okay.
I'd make a motion, well, I can't do it.
Dominic, did you want to make the motion? Okay, so you want to call for the motion?
Paul, if somebody would like to make a motion, please do so now.
I would move that we have a second round of votes on the 3 second-place vote getters in order to break the tie, and then have a final vote just between the 2 top vote getters. Yes.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
You just waxed my butt. It's okay. So we're going to go for 1 vote now?
Right.
Okay.
So
We still,
we'll do a tie-break vote between the top 3 vote getters. So we'll start with
The 3 who are tied. 'Cause the top-
correct. I'm sorry, thank you. The 3 that are tied for second place, we'll say it that way. So the first would be for...
Wait. I'm confused. So if Hicks has 4 votes, and now you want to tie-break 3 people, how is that?
So then the council will have one more round of votes with 1 vote.
But we're voting for all 4 of these people?
No.
no.
Oh, we're just voting for the
tie-
3.
the
Okay,
tie- yes,
thank you.
to break
And
the
then you'll
tie.
have a final vote to be able to decide between the top 2 candidates. So we'll start with Mr. Scholter.
Are we doing this?
So council has 1 vote, and you may just raise your hands. Sure. So we have 3 candidates that are tied with 3 votes: Mr. Scholter, Mr. Park, and Mr. Becker. So council will have 1 vote to determine the top vote getter for that. between the ties. So we'll start with Mr. Schulter. And Mr. Park. And Mr. Becker. Okay, so now we're down to Mr. Hicks and Mr. Becker. So we will start with, so now council has one vote to choose between either Mr. Hicks or Mr. Becker. So I'll start with Mr. Becker. And then I'll call for votes for Mr. Hicks. Okay.
We have a tie, I would imagine.
That's why we should have took Hicks in the top. That's why I knew that was going to happen.
So in the event that there's a tie, you have the opportunity to deliberate amongst yourselves and do a round of revoting if you should so choose. Another option is to have the top two candidates, so this would be Mr. Hicks and Mr. Becker, come to the next regularly scheduled council meeting when you'll have a full council present, so you would have a 7-body member. Or you could ask the candidates further questions if you'd like to help clarify your vote, if you want to go that route. Those are 3 options for the council's consideration.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Thank you. This is an unusual situation, and it was kind of unusual that this got scheduled when the mayor is away with staff on a city trip. So my thought would be maybe we wait till the next meeting when the mayor could be present so that she could participate in the voting.
Break the tie.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a motion, T? Okay.
So we'll invite
Have a
Mr.
vote.
Hicks.
Is everybody supportive of that motion? Okay.
We'll invite Mr. Hicks and Mr. Becker to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is April 24th. And you will have the opportunity to ask them further questions if you would like, especially with the mayor being present. And then we will have it properly agendized for a vote at that April 24th council meeting.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Okay, so does the 2 candidates, you understand, so you will be coming back to the April 24th meeting at 7 o'clock, and it will be an agenda item, and we will decide then. So sorry to keep you in suspense, but go home and get some sleep and get ready for April 24th, okay? So thank you again to everybody. I'm sorry that we didn't have 10 positions tonight to appoint you, but please know that there are many, many other commissions in this great city, and we hope that you will take advantage of another opportunity to apply, because there were really some good candidates out there tonight. And thank you again for applying. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn for this evening?
Second.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.